What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. Another fun video for you guys. And here we're in the Abzan list in historic ranked play. And the idea of this was basically creatures with enter the battlefield triggers. So Militia's Portal. So wasn't really any one particular creature that was the focus of the deck. It was more just kind of creatures that have enter the battlefield triggers and ways to kind of abuse them a little bit. And just looking at it, Abzan just makes perfect sense. And so we're going to go over this real quick, and you'll kind of start to see what I'm talking about. So we do need one drop here. So I think Chainweb Aracnir is a 1/2 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature with flying and opponent controls. So on turn 1, this is going to pick off like a Spectral Sailor or a Healer's Hawk or something like that. And it does have the escape mechanic where it escapes with 3+1/+1 counters on it for 5 mana and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard. So this is one of 2 escape creatures, so it kind of depends on your particular matchup. But also this just does have reach, so it can just kind of chump block against any larger flyers later on. And at the 2-drop slot, we have 4 of Charming Prince. It's a 2/2 for 1 and white. When it enters the battlefield, we can scry 2. We can gain 3 life, or we can exile another target creature you own and return it to the battlefield under our control at the beginning of the next end step. So depending on the situation, we can just gain some life if against like a creature or aggressive like creature or red deck wins or burn type deck. We can scry 2 if we just need to kind of fix our draws to find our 3rd and 4th lands, things like that. But most of the time you want to use it for exiling other creatures you control, and we can kind of abuse their enter the battlefield triggers. Another way we can do that is Justiciar's Portal for 2 mana instant speed. We exile a creature we control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it gains first strike until end of turn. So it's just mostly just there in the way to kind of abuse the enter the battlefield triggers. Sometimes it can be used for the first strike ability, where you can just kind of flicker something, have it come back down. Maybe one of our creatures can get first strike and then trade with something that our opponent wasn't expecting it to be able to. So it can be used somewhat defensively at times, but mostly it's just there to kind of protect our creatures. If they go for the spot removal, we can just portal in response and then protect our creature, and it'll come back down and it'll get its enter the battlefield trigger all over again. And since those are our only spells, everything else is creatures. So we're in a couple of Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. That's one of the new cards we've got in the Historic Anthology 2. It's 1 in white for a 2/1 first strike legendary human soldier. So it is legendary, so I think that's just why the 2 of, and of course does not have an enter the battlefield trigger. However, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So it's a little bit of a non-bo with Justiciar's Portal, but the portal is only 2 mana anyways, and we are just running just the 2 of Thalia. It's going to punish our opponents a lot harder than it's going to hurt us, so it makes it harder for them to cast board wipes and things like that. We slows them down for a turn, and also makes their spot removal cost 1 mana more and things like that. But that's also any non-creature spell, so planeswalkers, enchantments, anything like that. And we're basically all creatures except for those 2 and some of our sideboard pieces. So yeah, I think she fits in really well, deserves a slot. So we're running the 3 of Burglar Rat. It's a 1/1 for 2, so not really great. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So against slower decks, mid-rangey control matchups, we want to hit their hand as much as possible. And so having this out in those matchups is going to be putting in a lot of work, especially if we can flicker it with the Charming Prince and things like that. Just put the Burglar Rat down turn 2, turn 3 Charming Prince, flicker your Burglar Rat, make him discard a 2nd card. Works really well in certain matchups, but not always. More aggressive decks, it doesn't really do a whole lot. Merfolk Branchwalker, however, is a nice 2/1 for 2 that explores. So explores, if you're not familiar, you look at the top card of your library. If a land, it goes into your hand, so you draw a land card essentially. Or if it's a non-land, then you can either choose to leave it on top of your library or put it into your graveyard, and you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if it's a land, you draw it into your hand. Anything else, you can you put the counter on Merfolk Branchwalker, so it basically becomes a 3/2. And then that card, you can choose to leave it on top of your library, so you can draw it with your next draw step. or you can choose to put it into your graveyard if you want to kind of dig for something a little more relevant. So that's the Explore mechanic. We're running 4 of Militia Bugler. So it's kind of the namesake of the deck in the sense that it's a 2/3 for 3 with Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand, and then the rest just go to the bottom of your library. So the Explorer creatures we have, and pretty much everything we're running in here has 2 power or less on its stats, even if it does get bigger from Explore and things like that. So this is going to hit pretty much like 90% of our creatures. And then just having a 2/3 for Vigilance is a pretty decent stats as well. And kind of digging for additional creatures works really, really well. So also we have a 4 of Jadelight Ranger. It's a 2/1 that explores twice. So it could be up to a 4/3, depending on what's on top of your library. Or it could just draw you a couple of lands, which sometimes helps. If nothing else, just gets lands out of the way so you can kind of draw into something relevant the following turn at least. Running 4 of Ravenous Chupacabra. It's a 2/2 for 4, so not really great. However, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature and opponent controls. So, turn 4, we can just take out our opponent's biggest threat. And then if we have Justiciar's Portal, Charming Prince, we can just kind of abuse that trigger and just take out multiple creatures, which is a single Chupacabra. And of course, running 4 of, so we should see hopefully multiples of these out in any given matchup. We're also running a couple of Polukranos. It's another way to kind of fight opposing creatures, as it's technically it's a 0/0. So this will we can tutor this up with Militia Bugler, as enters the battlefield with 6 +1/+1 encounters on it, and does have escape, where it escapes with 12 +1/+1 encounters on it instead. If damage is dealt to it, it loses that many +1/+1 counters, and you can pay 3 to have it fight another target creature. So it's kind of a removal, and we can flicker this as well in certain situations, and it'll get its re-enter with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. So if you can have it fight something, then flicker it, and instead of having 1 or 2 counters, now it goes back to having 6 counters again. And so it does have 0 power, just like Chupacabra, and just like Jadelight Ranger, and basically every creature that we have for the Militia Bugler. The only creature that does not is 2 of Cavalier of Night. But Cavalier of Night is such a powerhouse in certain matchups, as it's a 4/5 for 5 mana, 2 and 3 black, for a 4/5 lifelinker that when it enters, we can sack another creature. If we do, we destroy target creature and opponent controls. And when the Cavalier of Night dies, we return a creature with CMC 3 or less from our graveyard straight to the battlefield. So we'll get its re-enter the battlefield trigger, and since that's the vast majority of our creatures, this is going to synergize this so well with what we're trying to do. And going over the mana base here, we have 1 Plains, 1 Castle Locthwain for a little bit of draw in the mid to late game, Forest, 4 Godless Shrines, 3 Chapels, 4 Overgrown Tombs, 3 Cemeteries, 3 Sunpetal Grove, and 4 Temple Gardens. So just to make sure we can kind of play out on curve, I went with all 4 shock lands, and then just 3 of each of the tap lands, and just try to make sure we have a basic to tutor up if our opponent's running like some kind of a Assassin's Trophy or some shenanigans like that. So going over the sideboard, running all 4 Agonizing Remorse for those control and mid-ranging matchups, so we can pick a card out of their hand. A couple of Legion's End to kind of help us against those kind of mono-white, mono-red, things like that. To play a lot of 1 and 2 drops as 4 ofs, as we can exile that creature with CMC 2 or less and all the creatures with the same name, and including from their hand, and they all go to exile. I run a couple of Banishing Lights, just as kind of a utility removal spell. A couple of Pharika's Libation as a way to get around hexproof, or to deal with some of those enchantment creatures that are hard to deal with. 3 of Night of Autumn, obviously against aggressive decks, and decks with artifacts or enchantments. We can get our Night of Autumn online and flicker it and abuse it multiple times. This can put in quite a bit of work. And I also like to have a little bit of game against the decks that have any sort of a graveyard interaction with their graveyard. So just a 2 of Leyline of the Void. If it's your open hand, it goes straight to the battlefield without even having to cast it. And if a card would put into our opponent's graveyard from anywhere, it goes to exile instead. So it shuts down Escape, shuts down Jumpstart, shuts down Arclight Phoenix, and all that good stuff. So I haven't really played around with this list too much in the current historic meta. I've kind of, you know, tested it a little bit and made a couple tweaks to it. This is more just kind of a something I put together at the end of the last historic season, and I thought it would be kind of a little bit memey, you know, just kind of a all creature enter the battlefield basically deck. But it actually worked reasonably well, and so yeah, I want to kind of give it another try and kind of showcase it for you guys, so you can kind of make up your own mind if this is something you're comfortable running in ranked play, or if you just want to run it in casual play, because it is a pretty fun deck. Okay, so we do have our Charming Prince into Bugler and potentially into a Chupacabra. Okay, we just want to scry for some lands. I mean, Branchwalker is not terrible. Okay, up against Is It Wizards. Burning Prophet. I got the Wizard's Lightning straight away as we get rid of our Prince. So we do need to hit our land drops. I'd rather not shock in this Temple Garden, so I'm thinking we don't have green, so we kind of have to. I still think we want to get our Branchwalker line so we get to the 4th mana so we can. Ooh, Thalia is interesting. I think we do want to get our Polukranos and Chupacabra online though. So getting to this 4th land. We already have 2 black for the Chupacabra and the black and green for Polukranos. We just need any 4th land here. Get those guys online, and especially for Wizards deck, it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with Polukranos. Okay, we're getting all their Wizard's Lightning out of their hand, and they're going to our creatures, not to our face, so that's fine. They're getting the procs for the Burning Prophet to kind of pitch in for more damage, but... Missing our land drop, so that might cost us the game. Jadelight Ranger it is. We're missing double green to cast it, though. I think Light Up the Stage is kind of an awkward card in their list. I know they have something, but we just have to block because our life total is quickly dwindling, and we'd rather have that burn go to the Bugler than our face. Okay, radical ideas. Maybe they're digging for an answer. I'm assuming they have a shock. No? Well, we just have these portals, so if they have the removal, we can just kind of flicker something. We have to do what we can. We're not really in a great spot here. If we can find the 4th land and keep this Prophet offline. So we force them to use the 2 spells to get rid of 1 creature. Our opponent's dumping their hand. Grabbing 1 creature. They did have the Lava Runner as well, but for being in the spot, they've certainly done well for themselves, but of course we're stuck on 3 lands. There we go. Jeez. Alright, Chupacabra down, get rid of that nonsense. I mean, they've used up a bunch of shocks and Wizard's Lightning already, so hopefully we can kind of stabilize from here, but Adelays, yeah, that's not going to do it. Yeah, we were just stuck on lands, and our opponent just kind of had a very, very good draw for them. Alright, so what do we want here? Thalia does much, all their spells are super efficient. Legion's End works. Night of Autumn works. Banishing Light is tempting. But it might be a little awkward. So basically we just need to curve out. If we can do that and get our creatures down, then we'll have a much better matchup. But when we're stuck on lands and our opponent is able to just burn all of our creatures and we can't respond to it, it's just not really much we can do. And then of course the Burning Prophet was pretty nice, getting them some scries. They were able to just dig just deep enough. Also, I just posted my Wizards list if you guys saw that one. So I'm not really sure about Light Up the Stage or Bone Crusher Giant here. I mean, obviously they're good magic cards, so it makes sense logically. Man, we do need a second land, and if we do, this hand is great. But I'm sure we'll get screwed, so I think we have to mulligan. And we'll keep this, so it's very slow, but I don't think we can afford to keep going down. So we can at least get the Woodland Cemetery down next turn, and then either Jadelight Ranger or Knight of Autumn. I think we'll Jadelight Ranger just dig for another land or something. Yeah. That makes our Ranger a force. They have to have Wizard's Lightning. Shock won't do it. And Stomp won't do it either. Okay, our opponent missing land drops. Send him a message. Okay, do we also make this a 4/3, or do we want to gain some life? I think we just want to present bigger threats if they're running things like Bone Crusher Giant. Or if they have a shock, that could be a mistake, and they do have a stomp. Okay. So I probably should have gone for the life gain there, but well, with the upside play of having a bigger threat on board. Now we can Chupacabra them. Okay, Burning Prophet into Bone Crusher. Nope. I just want to Light Up the Stage. This is why I don't like Light Up the Stage in this kind of list. Like, you want to get these procs before combat so you can push through more damage. So it just seems really awkward. That's why I didn't include things like that in my list. So sure, you get a Wizard's Lightning. Hopefully they just Bone Crusher Giant and get the Bone Crusher Giant down and not shock our Chupacabra, then we can Knight of Autumn and leave the portal open. I think I'm fine with gaining life here. We'll pass. We'll wait for them to try to burn something in response, and then we'll portal, hopefully. Of course, it's possible they have multiple burn spells. Lava Runner has haste. Okay, no response. Go to the big creature. Start threatening them. Okay, next turn we can start drawing. We're missing blue, so that's good for us. We just hold up Castle Locthwain and see what they do. Okay, having shock in Steam Vents because they finally found a blue source. Love Weed Dragonauts, but I just think it's personally a little bit slow. Legion's End is interesting. You know, 1 power, if they have a shock, they could have just killed something. Dragonauts is 3 CMC. So we can't Legion's End it, but since they took the block on the Chupacabra, the Aracnir can finish it off. So that was a nice block from our opponent. Thank you. Okay, they got Adeliz down, but they're not really in a good spot to attack. Legion's End can do the trick though. Are we in a position to escape? I think I'm fine with taking it. And we do need to find some answers, so I think we just keep drawing. Oh, Charming Prince is good. Legion's End, the Storm Tamer. Get a look at their hand. Niv Mizzet and Ionize. That's cute. So let's go to combat first. Alright. So that right there is the power of Abzan ETB. Alright. So our opponent kept a pretty sketchy hand. So now we either know they're running some tricky stuff. We might actually want to bring in these Banishing Lights then, if we do get to Niv Mizzet territory. So I think we just have to shave off some of our 3-drops to make room for the Banishing Light, which is also a 3-drop. And of course now our opponent's going first, and the aggressive deck is not to our advantage. If they Storm Tamer, we can kill it. I think we just play it slow. Wow, nothing on turn 2. Well, it's a Branchwalker, we can at least explore. I'm sure they have a burn spell here. Okay, we'll just get a land. No response, okay. Adelise, sure. We do have 4 lands for next turn. I think I'm fine with just getting the Knight of Autumn down and getting some life. That's going to be mostly relevant in this particular situation, going second. Our opponent running Castle Vantress and Castle Empress, so they're a very greedy deck. There's lightning on the Knight of Autumn, sure. Chupacabra. Could have Ionize. That would suck. I don't know why you had to think about that. We do have these Legion's End, so if they do find any little wizards, we can take them out. They're getting close to Niv Mizzet territory. Keep going with the Branchwalker. Let's let them burn that first, if that's what they have in hand. Okay, Jadelight Ranger. They have another counterspell. Wizard's Retort. It's another card that I didn't really care for in my particular build. It just felt really awkward to me. So just the 3 cards in our graveyard right now. Opponent digging for answers. These Legion's End would have been good in the other games, but such Adelise is a 3-drop. And yeah, if you want to kill my Chainweb Aracnir and put it into escape territory, that's fine with me. So next turn we can Bugler and hopefully date for something. I don't think our opponent knows exactly what that card does. So they are getting in for damage thanks to Adelise. Play Bugler, hopefully we can find something here. I think we're just Charming Prince. Maybe we just want to get in a life here. It's probably the safer play. Not jump starting the radical idea. Just going for light up the stage. Yeah, I mean, you're attacking first for 2 when you could have been attacking for 3 with like a Radical ID or something like that. So they do have Crackling Drakes and that sort of thing, which they can play. I think we attack here, and I mean, we have to find some way to... Okay. What? We just get rid of this. It's safer to do that before combat. Alright. So exile 4 other cards. So now we're in escape territory for Chainweb. So we can hopefully get rid of Adelise next turn. We'll see what they draw though. They can only play one of these Dragnauts from the light up the stage. Okay, Wizard's Lightning. And Outburst, so we're gonna get something back. So we are getting something back. But we still have the Cavalier going to our graveyard to keep us in escape range for the Chainweb Aracnir that can fight Adelise next turn. And our opponent, not really sure they're playing it the best way. We gain the life there, thank you. Sure, hitting us for 5, but we just gained a bunch of life. And you lose these Dragnauts. And this should just about shut them out of the game. Okay, they shock in response. So instead of hitting them for 6, we hit them for 4, and now we in a pretty good spot. Just do this Chimera. Doesn't go well too well with their deck at all. Legion's End can answer that. Alright. So yeah. Our opponent having a very cute kind of Wizards deck there. Mischievous Chimera. I don't know if that was a sideboard card. Niv Mizzet is pretty greedy. But, you know, Wizards are a fun tribe to play around with, so I don't really blame them. You know, Dragonauts is certainly something I really tried to force. And just 3 mana, I felt like it just died every single time. Obviously, when it does go off, it's super fun. But in that sense, it's kind of win Mori. So, yeah, definitely recommend you guys check out my Wizards list. I definitely recommend that and have a lot of success with it, as I stated in that video. Yeah, but enough about that. This one was Abzan, Enter the Battlefield, Militia's Portal. Yeah, it's a lot of fun where you can kind of abuse some of those battlefield triggers, especially on like Chupacabra, and just kind of get rid of your opponent's stuff time after time. You know, we have some escape mechanics, so a little bit of a grind factor as well. So if the game kind of drags on a little bit, you do still have some game in those situations as well, and some nice sideboard options against other mid-rangey and kind of control matchups. So yeah, deck's definitely a lot of fun, and has definitely performed better than I expected it to when I first put it together. And like I said, I've tweaked it for the current historic meta. That's my list. Obviously, you guys can kind of tweak it to your liking. It's a lot of fun to play, and yeah, give it a try. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Take care.